This episode is brought to you by Stirling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Stirling soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at stirlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Hey, and welcome to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. Check out our full line of sports history podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. This is your host for This Dish, Steve White. It is August 13th, and on this day in 1936, it was one of the most brutal and unfair decisions ever handed down against an athlete. Jesse Owens had just wowed Germany and the world, winning 4 gold medals and spoiling Hitler's parade of supposed Aryan superiority in the process. Owens had finished up his Olympics on the 9th with the 4x100 relay. The games were still going on and, in fact, would not wrap up until the 16th. On this day in 1936, though, the man who had just electrified the world with his performance was declared a professional athlete by American Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage and banned from competition for life. How did we get from national hero to persona non grata before the Olympics even ended? Well, first know that Brundage wielded a lot of power as not only the head of the AOC, but until 1935, he'd been head of the Amateur Athletic Union, or AAU. If you were an American track athlete, you ran under the AAU banner. So the AAU set up post-Olympic events around Europe for American track athletes to compete in, signing contracts with various cities and organizations. What the AAU cared about in this situation was money. The way they treated the athletes, like Owens, was of little concern. Owens and other track stars' first performance was on the 10th, the day after the 4x100 final. That meet was held in Cologne, Germany. The organizers told Brundage that if Owens participated, there was an additional 10 to 15% from the gate receipts coming the AAU's way. Owens was tired, and he wasn't really interested, but he wasn't given a choice. So he competed, and he won the 100-meter dash and the long jump on the 10th. There was a banquet after, which Owens was expected to attend. When the banquet ended, it was midnight. Next stop on the 11th, Prague, and this time Owens was sent by himself. He slept in the airport, had no money for food or shelter, borrowed enough to buy a sandwich and some milk, made it to the venue at 4:30 in the afternoon. He ran the 100 and the long jump, and won both once again. On the 12th, it was back to Germany and a meet in the small town of Bochum. He hadn't eaten in a day. The AAU had not given him any travel money or arranged for any way to feed himself or lodging or given him the benefit of a day of rest. Instead, he relied on the kindness of strangers to feed him in the afternoon. He bussed to the local stadium, where he equaled his world record time in the 100 meters. Traveling again with his teammates, the next stop on the tour on this day was England. They were all forced to sleep in the airport hangar. 3 straight days of traveling and competing with, as Owens put it, no money to even buy a souvenir. Every one of the athletes knew the AAU was making money on their appearances at these events, and they were not getting anything. Owens had been getting telegrams from back home, though, with offers to come race in the States or just appear in a show or at an orchestral performance. One promoter offered him $40,000. Another offered up $25,000. So think about it. You're a 22-year-old black athlete with no money to your name. You've just won 4 gold medals and are the talk of the world. People are offering you money to just come be in a show or race a few races. Or you could stay an amateur athlete and be paraded around Europe like a show pony with not a penny for your efforts or trouble coming your way. Which would you do? Owens ran the race in England on this day, and once again he won. Next on the list was Stockholm, and then it was to Finland and Norway, but at this point he had had enough. He pulled out of the rest of the tour, and he booked passage on a boat back to New York City. As soon as Brundage heard the news on this day, he declared Owens a professional athlete and banned him for life from competing on the amateur level ever again. The suspension became automatic as soon as Owens refused to fulfill his competitive obligations, according to Brundage's telegram to AAU Secretary Daniel Ferris. Brundage used his fury to destroy a man. Jesse Owens, 4-time medal winner. Here's the thing, though. Owens had not signed a contract. He hadn't been paid by anybody yet. He'd just gotten tired of running so somebody else could get paid a lot of money. But Brundage was mad because his show horse left the show that he'd never signed up for to begin with. And Brundage wielded his iron hammer with authority. When Owens got off the boat in New York City, the promises of big money never materialized. There was a lot of talk, but that's all it was. Talk. And Jesse Owens was out of luck as long as Avery Brundage was in charge. Months later, Owens was in Havana, Cuba, racing a horse for money. The race was initially scheduled to be against Cuban sprinter Conrado Rodriguez, but Brundage threatened to ban Rodriguez if he raced against Owens. Brundage only got stronger and more wealthy, becoming a millionaire from his construction business and real estate dealings. Owens, on the other hand, filed for bankruptcy in 1939. He spent the next 16 years looking for a steady job. He raced more horses, raced heavyweight champ Joe Louis, but the events and the money became less and less over time. He was still fast enough, though. In 1950, at the age of 37, he ran a 100-yard dash in 9.7 seconds. Brundage was still in charge, though, and eventually took over as IOC president in 1952 and held on to that position for 20 years. According to Owens' wife, Minnie, Jesse was not a bitter man. He liked moving ahead with life. It was always like he was gearing up for the Olympics, she said, and nothing was going to stop him. Except for Avery Brundage and what he did to Owens on this day in 1936. On this day in 1991, San Francisco 49er quarterback Joe Montana suffered an injury that set in motion the rise of his successor. And that's just part of the story, but let's start here and then rewind. So on this day, the Niners were having a regular preseason practice, no contact to the QBs for sure. Montana was throwing deep balls, and when he launched a 40-yard pass to one of his receivers during a drill, he felt a pop. And that pop hurt, and that hurt turned out to be a torn tendon in his right elbow. The Niners were coming off a really good year. They'd played in the NFC Championship game back in January, but lost to the New York Giants, the eventual Super Bowl champs. Well, in that game, Montana had taken a brutal hit in the fourth quarter, delivered by defensive end Leonard Marshall. Montana was laid out and he suffered a broken hand, a few cracked ribs, a bruised stomach, and a bruised sternum. A lot of people point to that moment as the rise of Steve Young, but in preseason camp, Montana was back in as the starter. But when Montana's elbow tendon snapped on this day, the job was handed to Young again, and this time he would not give it up. Montana would miss the entire 91 season and the majority of the 92 season. But by the time he was cleared to play, Steve Young was the number one. Montana was eventually traded to Kansas City after the 92 season, largely based on what happened on this day in 1991. And on this day in 1989, golfer Payne Stewart won his first major. This could really be more of a case of Mike Reed losing it, but Payne did what he needed to do in the closing holes to give himself a chance, and it led to him holding the big trophy in the end. Payne had really not been part of the conversation in this tournament in the first 3 days. After a third round 69, he was on the leaderboard, but a cool 6 shots behind Reed. And there were major tournament winners in front of him, like Curtis Strange, Seve Ballesteros. But Payne barged into the room on the back 9 on Sunday and announced his presence with 4 birdies in the last 5 holes to become the leader in the clubhouse at 12 under. But Reed was still on course, and with 3 holes to play, he still had a 2-shot lead. But on 16, Reed pushed his drive into the water, and after salvaging a bogey, his lead was down to 1. On the par 3 17th, he looked like a 15 handicapper, missing a short par putt and then missing the comebacker for a double bogey. He now trailed by a shot. On the 18th, Reed had a 7-foot birdie putt to tie and send it to a playoff. But it slid by, and Payne Stewart won the first of his 3 majors. Time now for today's Non-Sports Did You Know? Each and every day, your brain uses around 20% of your body's blood and oxygen. That's all for today, and let me help your brain think for just a moment and save some oxygen. So, you listen to this podcast, so you must enjoy it a little bit, right? How about taking just a moment and giving it a 5-star rating? That's it. Don't overthink it. No need to write anything. Unless you want to, then sure, go right ahead. Release your inner William Faulkner and go to town. But today, I'm just asking for some stars. Well, not some stars, 5 stars really. And that's it. Hey, but no matter what, I'll be back here tomorrow with another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.